Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's ENRICH in China webinar on doing business in China, challenges and opportunities. We're today honored to have two very experienced experts in our webinar. Allow me to introduce them. Helen Ju is a legal advisor of the EU SME Centre, a project funded by the European Union, also as ENRICH in China is. Helen has been working with the center as the key legal expert for 6 years. She has more than 14 years of experience in the legal areas of foreign investment in China, in trade, contract, tax and employment, and she's providing advice to clients in various industries. Previously, Helen worked with law firms as a licensed lawyer since 2004. And our second expert is Jacob Gunter. He's Policy and Communications Coordinator at the European Chamber of Commerce in China. In this position, he leads on researching and drafting of publications and contributes to media engagement. He holds a dual master's degree in international studies with a focus on China from the Johns Hopkins School for Advanced International Studies and Nanjing University, as well as a bachelor's degree in international business from the University of Denver. He has over 6 years of experience in China and has lived in Nanjing, Shanghai, Beijing, and Zhuzhou, a small city in Zhejiang province. So we are very happy and thankful to have them in our webinar today. But before I give the floor to Helen, I would like to draw your attention to our upcoming workshop. It is a one-day workshop on December 5th in Brussels. It is on co-incubation and funding opportunities in Europe and China. This workshop will highlight services provided by 4 soft landing zones in China. It will give an insight and an introduction to the Chinese STI landscape, and in the afternoon provide insights into successful and unsuccessful cases of EU-China cooperation, as well as a practice session at the end. So you can find all the details also on our homepage. And of course, if you have questions, please just don't hesitate to contact us. And speaking of questions, you can also pose questions during the webinar in the chat section, and we will collect them and answer them all together with the experts in the Q&A part of the webinar. And yes, my name is Elli Stepanovic. I am a project manager at the Austrian Research Promotion Agency and also partner in the ENRICH in China project. And now I'm very happy to pass the floor to Helen Ju, to our first expert.
Thank you, Elli, for a kind introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm Helen Ju, the legal advisor of SME Centre. It's an honor for me to share some information with you today. Allow me first to introduce the center briefly. SME Centre is a project funded by European Union since 2010 with the support of 6 chambers listed here as the implementing partners. The center provides support to SMEs doing or planning to do business in China from the aspects of legal standards and conformity, business development, and HR. We are based here in Beijing. Currently, the center is in its 2nd phase. We provide publications, trainings, and advice services. Sorry, Here are the main achievements of the center so far. Since Elli has given a very detailed introduction of myself, I'll skip this one and going to today's topic. I have about 20 minutes today to share with you some information on knowing your potential Chinese partners from legal perspective. In other words, how to do due diligence on them. This is today's agenda. Due to time constraint, I may go through them fast. You may meet various business partners in doing business with China. Here I list some examples. Most Chinese companies are honest and willing to develop sustainable business. But working with the center for over 6 years, I received many scam reporting from USMEs. Most are trade scams. I'll introduce several real cases too. The first case, the Chinese partner asks for notarization fee. In fact, notarization is not mandatorily required for trade contracts. Similar cases are when foreign companies were asked to pay administrative fees, inspection fees, etc. Without exception, once payment was made, the Chinese partner just disappeared. I will introduce in a little bit detail about the second case. In this case, a European company turned to us for assistance after they were cheated by a so-called Shanghai company. We reviewed the contract. It's a pure English version one, without even the Chinese name of the company. At the end of the contract, there is a blue seal like this, with both Chinese and English names. But as you can see, the Chinese name is very unclear. We tried to search who this partner is through different channels for the USME. According to the company's English address in the contract, we dialed 114 for the contact information of the property management company of the building. We reached and convinced the manager to check for us, but the response was that there isn't such a company with this English name there. We also checked with the bank indicated in the contract. But as a financial institution, it has strict confidentiality obligation and had good reason to refuse to disclose any information of its clients, even the Chinese name of that. The EU company, under this situation, the EU company can report to the Public Security Bureau at the place where the bank is located. If the Public Security Bureau takes the case, carries out the investigation and requires the bank to cooperate, they can get the contact information, the Chinese name of this partner. But the whole process will be very long. It will start from for the EU company to prove its own entity and prepare lots of documents, evidence in the required form. The EU company did not have motivation to move forward on this. So eventually, this USME was cheated and didn't even know who the cheater was and from where to start the claim. It's very pitiful. And the next case, it's buying cooking oil and getting water. In this case, the seller even provided some task report on the product. This time, the stamp is clear, but this so-called Chinese company does not really exist. The EU company suffered loss of over 4,000 euro due to its negligence in due diligence. So all these USMEs asked us, can you help us get the money back? But unfortunately, the chance is very slim. So it's important to identify problematic business partners at early stage. I list here some partners people should avoid doing business with. First, fake companies. These companies do not really exist under Chinese law. The second, imposters. The company exists, but people contacting the foreign companies are not who they claim they are. Shell companies. The company legally exists, possesses the required licenses, but has no significant assets required for its operation. When they breach and after litigation or arbitration of the disputes, they do not have assets available for enforcement. The foreign company cannot be compensated. So you can see it's important to do due diligence, but how to do it? I've introduced some simple and practical methods here today. Once you learn, it's easy to master. Basically, it's from three aspects: legal, financial, and operational. I put the legal status in the first place. Sorry, it's not working very. Oh. Yeah, I put the legal status in the first place and will focus on this part, as without legitimate existence, there is no need to talk about your potential partners' financial health and operational conditions. So the main part, legal due diligence. If there's one slide you should take away from my presentation today, this is this one. I will explain the items one by one. First, every Chinese company shall be registered with the registration authority, and only Chinese name is registered. Knowing English name alone does not help you identify who the partner is. So first thing, to ask for its registered Chinese name. Once registered, every Chinese company can get a business license from the registration authority. There should be 2 copies, original and duplicate. Please ask your potential partner for the duplicate one, as the original one is required to hang on the wall of the company's office. It's easy to be accessed by putting posters and taking pictures. Next, check with the National Enterprise Credit Information Publicity System. It's a key governmental website for due diligence. Candidly note that all searches with governmental authorities' websites, including this one, are free and available to the public. As long as you have someone who can read and write Chinese, you can do it yourself. If you type in a company's Chinese name or its unified social credit code here, if the company does not exist, you will get the one appeared just now. Oh, it's not. Sorry. I'm sorry. I want to pick it back. Yeah, thank you. One slide previous, the previous one. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, this is the one. If this company does not exist, you will get this one. And this is the information show you there's no information about the company you are checking. And if this company does exist, web page like this will appear with its basic registration and filing information. You can also access this web page by scanning the QR code on the business license shown previously. This is to help you understand what information you can get from the search. I will introduce several important items for your notice. First, Chinese name. It should be strictly consistent with the name of the partner approaching you, its name on the contract, its name on the duplicate business license you get. Unified social credit code. Since 2015, each company shall have a unified social credit code. It's like the ID number of an individual. It does not change your life. Legal representative. Only legal representative has the power to represent a Chinese company to conclude transactions. According to Chinese law, it could be either chairman of board or executive director in case of sole director or general manager. It should be stated in the articles of association of the company and filed with the registration authority. Anyone else, even the shareholders of the company, if they are not the legal representative, they cannot represent the company. If someone approaches you on behalf of a company, but it's not the legal representative, remember to ask them to provide power of attorney issued by the company. Approval date. This is a very important item because this date shows that when the most updated business license was issued. So if you receive a duplicate business license, which is dated earlier than this approval date, it is not a valid one. Business scope. Detailed business activities engaged by a Chinese company shall be listed under this item. From this, you can see that what our other qualifications this company should possess. The system also contains some additional information as listed here, but this part may not be complete now, and it's still under construction. Depending on the business to be engaged in, you may ask for additional certificates for review. I give some sample certificates named here. If your potential Chinese partner engages in import and export, it needs to have the foreign trade operator qualification, and it should be able to show you this form. A food production company should possess this certificate. For food distribution company, it should possess the food operation license. To form a JV with a Chinese partner who will make capital contribution in the form of land use right, it is critical to examine this certificate. Cross-border e-commerce is popular in China. Tmall's online sale on November 11th this year reached over 200 billion RMB. So if you want to sell to Chinese customers directly through cross-border e-commerce yourself, instead of using the third-party platform like Tmall, because they will charge very high threshold fees, then you need a customs declaration agent to support you in the business process. The agent shall have such a certificate. Next, you can search on governmental websites for double check on the information of these certificates and their validity. This is the website of the Ministry of Commerce for Trade Operator Qualification Check. The positive result you can get from the system is like this. This is the website for food production qualification check. And check of the qualification of your Chinese customs declaration agent on customs website. Next, stamp check. All stamps like these listed here are not valid. In China, a company is required to file 4 stamps with Public Security Bureau. Official company stamp called Common Seal, and 3 special stamps, finance, contract, and invoice. Filed stamps of a Chinese company function same as signature of the responsible person of a foreign company. On contract, a Common Seal or a special contract stamp shall be chopped. A Common Seal may look like this, with a 5-pointing star in the model, having a 13-number stamp code under the star in red ink. The shape can be circular or oval. It could be made of bronze or rubber. Checking stamps is difficult in practice. Some local public security bureaus try to improve this through WeChat official accounts recently. In Shanxi province, the Public Security Bureau made some progress. They input a company name there. You can get some information about the company, about here is invoice stamp. But the information is still not complete. claims it's not working yet, I use a neighboring company's name and its stamp code and find the information is not consistent with the reality. In the long run, it should be the goal of the government to make stamp check available to the public in the future. Website examination. Remember to scrutinize every piece of information you can get from your potential Chinese partner, including its website contents. Review if the content itself is consistent. This one, its address is in Guizhou, but however, the area code of the fax number is 010 belonging to Beijing. Apparently, something is wrong with this potential partner. In this case, the potential Chinese partner sent a duplicate business license and its website address. When examining the website, we find it is in English alone. Please be very careful when you come across such cases. Chinese is the official language in China. It does not make sense that a Chinese company only has an English version website. According to the website, the business license received, this company was set up in 2014. But in the About Us section, you can find, as indicated on the right side, it claims it already had 20 years experience in manufacturing the products. It's very probable people approaching the EU company is an imposter. It's using others' business license they got illegally while providing its own fake website and its own contact information in order to cheat. The website of a Chinese company shall have an ICP filing number at its bottom, or a license number in case it's a value-added telecommunication company. So for ordinary Chinese company, check its filing number on its website with the MIT website here. Contact person check. To verify if a person contacting you can represent the company as he claims, first, to ask for the power of attorney if he is not the legal representative. Second, you may try a video call through WeChat or Skype and get a screenshot of the person. Third, ask for ID card and of the contact person and check with the National Identity Information Center. Such service is only available to companies registered in mainland China. So foreign invested enterprises can access this service, but pure foreign companies cannot. We do not have much information we do not have much time. We do not have much time on financial and operational due diligence. Here are some points for you to notice. Please note that it's net assets instead of registered capital that represents the financial strength of a company. Only listing companies in China are obligated to provide their financial statements to the public. Other Chinese companies just upload their brief financial information to the National Enterprise Credit Information Publicity System when they do the annual reporting. And governmental authorities are not responsible for the correctness of such information. In addition to the information listed here, I've also mentioned that since it's hard to verify financial status of a Chinese company, if you buy products from China, be careful about payment term. What you can do is try not to make advance payment, choose letter of credit as payment term, and provide third-party inspection report as one of the documents required for payment, and decide yourself which inspection institution should be used and to issue such report. For operational due diligence, you're recommended to pay a site visit to better learn your partner. You may see with your own eyes the conditions of that Chinese company, its location, its office premise, the original business license on the site and other licenses, and its actual manufacturing activities, etc. And also try to talk with different people, get information from various independent sources. So based on this, draw your own conclusion about your potential channel partner. Here I give some takeaway tips. First, change the viewpoint on due diligence. People don't do due diligence due to various reasons. They may not realize the necessity. They don't know how to do it, or they feel it's troublesome or costly and don't want to do it. But the root reason is people are driven by short-term commercial interests, that some basic rules are neglected and decisions are made recklessly. They expose themselves to risks which should have been avoided. Indeed, it's worthy to invest reasonable time in due diligence to screen problematic business partners. In the long run, avoiding losses is earning. As introduced previously, once a foreign company gets cheated, very few can be done. Oh yeah, let me see. It's, sorry. Shall we go back to the, this page. Thank you, thank you, Vasca. The second, trust what you see, not what you hear. To collect information, know what to ask and examine, and how to examine. In details, ask for Chinese names of your potential Chinese partner, review stamps, check partner's website. If it's English alone, information there is consistent or not. If it's consistent with those information in the business license, check ICP filing numbers and the owner of this number through the MIT website. And also ask for business license and other certificates. Pay attention to the approval date of the business license for its validity. Check relevant governmental websites. Verify contact person identity. Scrutinize every piece of information obtained. Do not let it go easily if you feel something wrong. Third, be careful when things look too good. Is it too smooth? Is it too fast? Prices considerably cheap than market average? Then do not engage. At least do not rush into decisions. Fourth, check with multiple sources and make independent judgment. It is hard for swindlers to manipulate all information resources. Yeah, and in practice, we also may receive some requests for due diligence on a company registered in Hong Kong or Macau. About this, I would like to clarify that in this webinar, Chinese partner here refers to enterprises registered in mainland China. The method introduced just now does not apply to companies registered in Hong Kong or Macau, as Hong Kong and Macau are different legal jurisdictions from mainland China, though they are part of China politically, and their governmental administration systems are also different. I think this is today's content from me. I list the publication of the center in this aspect for your reference. Please feel free to access and download it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Helen, for sharing your experience and giving us so important pieces of advice and the takeaway tips at the end. Thank you so much. If there are questions, please write them down. We can answer them at the last part of the webinar. And now I would like to give the floor to Jacob Gunter from the EU Chamber of Commerce in China. Thank you, Helen, once again.
All right, hello. My name is Jacob Gunter, and I'm from the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China. And we're going to discuss some of the challenges and opportunities for doing business in China. And this will be a little bit more at a kind of a higher level than the previous presentation, which was much more kind of detailed and specific. So a little bit more macro to kind of provide a different perspective. Let's see. It's not letting me go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so today we're going to focus on three main things for the opportunities and challenges. First, we'll be looking at the opportunities. So why do companies enter the China market? And then the second and third points, we'll be discussing the challenges of doing business in China. And the first will be sort of the competitive and market-based challenges that companies face. And the third section will be about the regulatory challenges and the things that are essentially caused by the government that impact business operations in China. So let's start with the opportunities. Why enter the China market? Okay, so there are two main reasons. Oh, sorry. Can we go back one? There we go. So there are two main reasons to enter the China market. The first is to produce for export, and the second is to be, as many of our members put it, to be in China for China. So the first, for producing for export, obviously the cost of labor in China was the historical reason for many European companies to set up their operations here. Now, that lower cost of labor has generally been rising in most parts of the country over the last 20 or so years in particular, as incomes are rising and quality of life is improving, and costs for daily necessities have also been going up. So what this is doing is it's forcing many companies that are there to produce for export to other markets to confront some potentially difficult decisions about whether they will stay where they are, whether they will go to other markets to produce for export, or, as many companies are beginning to do, to look kind of inland and inside of China proper. As most European companies are based in the coastal regions of China, which is where the most developed markets are, but also where the costs are the highest. So many companies are starting to look at Chongqing and Chengdu and parts of the Northeast where labor costs have fallen. And just looking at those opportunities to continue to take advantage of cheaper labor. The second thing is the great infrastructure in China. Of course, we all read plenty of stories about the trains, about the highways, the port facilities, and things like that. The fact that this is never even brought up as a concern for the member companies of the European Chamber indicates just how good the infrastructure is. As well, to go with the previous point about the cost of labor, the improvements to China's infrastructure is making it easier for European companies to move further inland and further into the country to be able to produce goods with cheaper labor costs, but ship them without much of an increase in logistics costs. Now, this is especially true in what's called the Yangtze River Belt, that goes from Shanghai all the way up to Chongqing, kind of in the center of the country. The entire river is navigable and it has great infrastructure. So now everything along that river is ripe for development opportunities, many of which remain very underdeveloped considering what could be there. So again, a good opportunity for European companies. And the third point is the excellent location of China for exporting to different markets. Of course, you have local markets in East Asia, both with China, but also with Japan and South Korea, increasingly Southeast Asia as well. But you also are able to kind of be in between the North American market and the European market. And as well as other regions develop in Africa, the Middle East, South and Latin America, China will remain in a very central position logistically. Now, the other kind of opportunity in the Chinese market is to produce for the China market. Now, of course, China has 1.4 billion people, which means you have 1.4 billion consumers, and their incomes are rising quite rapidly. So rising incomes and a large customer base means plenty of customers and plenty of opportunities. But as well, China's rising middle class is where a lot of European businesses see the best opportunities. In fact, even with the economy generally slowing down in China over the last few years, what's interesting is that European companies here have been reporting to the chamber higher and higher revenues and higher profitability and earnings before interest and taxes, EBIT. So much so that even this last year was the highest year on record for the European Chamber for the number of members who reported positive EBIT, and it was also the lowest year on record for companies reporting negative EBIT. So again, this kind of shows that China's middle class is rising, and they want access to high quality goods and services, which, while Chinese companies are improving their ability to provide those, European companies have a very strong edge already. And they're able to make the most of that and to do excellent business here. And then the third point for why to enter the China market, for the China market, is the increasingly innovative and competitive talent. China has an extremely well-educated workforce, both for essentially people who study within China, but also it has, millions and millions of people who have studied abroad, including in Western countries, many of whom then speak the languages and have a better understanding of the culture. And so they're able to work for European companies quite easily. But as well, they're proving that by bringing these skills back and also developing new skills in China, that they not only can integrate well with European companies, but they can also provide additional value with these skills and with their new innovation. So all of these things are reasons why China, based on feedback from our members in an annual business confidence survey that we do, why China remains to be a top destination for European investment. This year in our business confidence survey, 80% of members indicated that China is a top 5 destination source for or destination for investment. Many of whom viewed it as either the top or a top 3 market, and many of them, essentially the same number, have that same view for the future, that it will remain a top market and a top source or destination for investment. So moving on, let's discuss the competitive challenges of doing business in China, kind of contrast with those opportunities. So the competitive and market-based challenges in China are certainly on the rise. Chinese firms are increasingly competitive, both in China and abroad. We find, for example, that 43% of our members are concerned about competitive pressure over the next 2 years. And as well, we find that European companies are having to make sort of more competitive decisions, such as 46% of members indicating that they plan to cut costs in China this year, which is an 8% increase from the year before. Now, members are generally speaking very optimistic about growth, and they view the competitiveness of the Chinese market as a challenge, but they view it as a good challenge. After all, European companies regularly do business in highly competitive markets in Japan, South Korea, North America, Australia, places like this, where they go toe-to-toe with very competitive companies, and they're able to do business quite well. So these competitive challenges are being viewed as a positive challenge. As well, we see another big shift for the competitive challenges in China with the innovation coming out of China. Now, China has made a very big move from the government level to really push innovation and research and development. But just as importantly, China's private economy, the private sector, has been able to push this itself very, very well. Now, from feedback from our members, we have a third of members saying that China's R&D environment is better than the worldwide average. 1/3 say it's about the same, and 1/3 say that it's lower than the worldwide average. But that has been a steady increase year after year after year in the feedback from this business confidence survey that we provide. As well, we actually see coming out of this a very sharp increase in members reporting satisfaction with China's IPR systems and protection systems. Now, what we see is, for example, in 2013, only 13% of our members indicated that they were satisfied with China's IPR protection enforcement. Now you've rushed forward to 2018, and it's now 34%. So, more than doubled within 5 years. And what's interesting is that this innovation, or this protection of IPR, is mainly being driven by Chinese firms becoming more and more innovative. In fact, of all of the court cases regarding IPR protection in China last year, only 3% had anything to do with foreign companies. So if 97% of the court cases regarding IPR are between Chinese companies, this also further indicates that IPR protection is a priority of the government because of an increasingly innovative domestic market. Now, as a result of all of this, our members have reported a very sharp increase, especially in the last year, in that 61% of our members this year responded that they feel that Chinese firms are as competitive or more competitive than they are. Now, this is a 1-year increase coming from 47%. So for the first time, it's a majority, but as importantly, it was a 14% increase from the year before. What's also interesting is that from this feedback, we break it down even further. Traditionally, China has been innovative in the application of new technology, or the way that it's marketed to consumers and utilized by consumers. They've been able to apply things in ways that European companies had failed to consider, but they were not so good at creating new products and new services. But that's no longer the case. They've essentially reached parity at this. So essentially, European companies can no longer operate under the assumption that many people had for a long time, which is that China will never become innovative. China is outpacing European companies in many areas, or they're rapidly reaching the same level, which again, European companies in China, they welcome this because they're excited to have this competition, to have this innovation, to be a part of it, and to perhaps take some of these innovative ideas and bring them back to Europe and to European consumers. So, as said, we welcome all of these competitive challenges in China because it's just a maturing market. However, what European companies are less welcoming towards are the regulatory challenges in China. So the first of the three sections we'll discuss within regulatory challenges are market access barriers. So we break these down into direct barriers and into indirect barriers. So direct ones mostly come from what's referred to as China's negative list on foreign investment. Now, the negative list has 48 items on it where investment from foreign companies is either restricted or prohibited. These include some largely insignificant things like some traditional Chinese medicine, or, for example, calligraphy brushes and calligraphy paper, which are largely not of interest for European companies. But it also includes things like providing legal services, doing certain types of energy exploration for oil and natural gas, and several other areas that are very much of interest to European companies. Now, this negative list actually represents a significant decrease in direct market access barriers compared to previous years. In the past, for example, there were very hard restrictions on equity, the share of equity that European businesses, or rather foreign businesses, could have when investing in the Chinese market, that forced them to enter into joint ventures, JVs, with Chinese partners. Now, in 6 different areas, these have either gone away or they are going away over the next couple of years. And 3 of those are in financial services, so banking and securities, and insurance. And then the 4th, 5th, and 6th are in manufacturing, in aerospace, in automotive, and in shipbuilding. So these have all seen these equity caps raised and or removed to the point where foreign companies can now take a controlling share of these companies, or they can go a step further and take complete control if they're able to get the shares, or they can invest in fresh new companies that are 100% foreign owned. However, there are a lot of other barriers to being able to access the market, and these are the sort of indirect barriers. Now, just to lift one example is with licensing. So licensing in financial services, for example, is a major problem because now European banks can enter China and can take full ownership of banks. The problem is that they are not able to access certain licenses to provide the services that they think they can be competitive in. They, for example, don't see any opportunities in creating, basic consumer and retail banking operations. The market is very saturated there, and they don't see that as, setting up basic standard bank branches for your everyday person as a real opportunity. But they do see opportunities in things like cross-border services, where they can provide custodial services to help foreign investors invest in China and to help Chinese investors to invest abroad. However, these licenses are extremely difficult to obtain, and they also have really high capital reserve requirements that are orders of magnitude higher than they are in the rest of the world. And this essentially means it's a de facto market access barrier. They're not able to provide these services, so they don't increase their investment. We also see in ICT, information communications technology, that many services require certain kinds of licensing, particularly what the Chinese refer to as value-added telecommunications services. And essentially, European companies are just not able to access these for both official reasons of things that they cannot meet on paper, but also we hear from many of them that they're denied and they're not given a clear reason as to why they're denied this kind of license. So all of these things create market access barriers that limit the ability of European companies to enter the market and to do business in the market to begin with. Now, the second area of regulatory challenges are the regulations themselves. So first, many of these are burdensome and or unpredictable in nature. So for example, with new energy vehicles, China has been pushing, new energy vehicles are essentially electric vehicles, electric cars. And China has been pushing the development of this industry very, very aggressively. with very intense and heavy subsidy schemes and with regulatory support. And this is an area where European automakers are very excited about the opportunities in. And especially considering that as part of the new negative list, investment in NEV production is now open to whole foreign ownership. The problem is that the regulatory framework around NEVs changes at least on a yearly basis, often every 6 months. And the issue with that, for example, with the kind of standards for how batteries need to be done, or how much range is expected to get out of a certain vehicle, also how a subsidy scheme works, or even how an NEV credit system works to try to encourage development, that these things change so often, which is a problem for an industry that is usually making plans and thinking about 5 years ahead of time. So they cannot respond to this unpredictable system. As well, pollution control is another good example. Last year, there was a very, very aggressive push after President Xi Jinping spoke about the importance of environmental protection in October at the 19th Party Congress. And there was a very aggressive push by government officials to clean up air pollution in China, which, as someone living in Beijing, I was very happy for. The problem was that they did it very erratically. Rather than having compliance-based systems where companies that were not up to code and were not complying with environmental regulations would be shut down or fined, it was very common for local officials across the country to shut down companies irrespective of whether they are in compliance or not, on days where the pollution was quite high. And what this meant was that it didn't matter if these European companies invested very heavily in the right kind of machinery to meet these standards, and to even go beyond those standards because they have international ones that they follow, that they were being shut down along with some of the local firms that were very much in violation of these policies. So these sorts of regulatory burdens cause a significant challenge for companies. Now, the second area of regulatory challenges comes from the unequal treatment that foreign companies experience here. Now, there's a system in China, there's a law called the company law, which is sort of the foundational legal system for businesses in China. Now, the company law applies to Chinese companies, but it also applies to foreign companies. However, foreign companies have additional laws that they have to exist under. Now, these are what we refer to as the foreign investment laws, and basically they create a separate legal definition for foreign companies and create specific, essentially, burdens and requirements for them that local companies do not have to have. But the worst thing about this is by creating a legal distinction that's referred to as foreign invested enterprises, FIEs, that what this does is it creates a mindset from the very get-go for the regulators who are enforcing things at the ground level, that foreign companies are not legally equal to Chinese ones. And this opens the door for legal discrimination. And the frustrating thing about this is, like I was saying earlier, European companies are very welcoming towards the market competition in China. But with this unequal treatment, it ends up putting them in a situation where they're excited to be at equal competitive levels with Chinese firms. But if they ultimately then get unfair advantages, it puts them at it puts European companies in a position where they can't, it doesn't matter if they're competitive or not, if the government is essentially giving them worse treatment. And then the last thing I'd like to talk about after the regulatory challenges is related to state-owned enterprises in China, the SOEs. Now, SOEs are probably the area where things have most clearly not only not improved or stayed the same, but have actually gotten significantly worse in the last couple of years. SOE reform in the Chinese context is very different from SOE reform in the European context, where in Europe, it means privatization, it means independence from the government, it means more competition, and it means that they act like market entities. In the Chinese context, SOE reform means, as President Xi puts it, that SOEs will become bigger, better, and stronger. So what we've seen is that areas of the economy that are completely dominated by SOEs continue to be essentially so dominant that they crowd out competition. Now, in the past, this was done with multiple SOEs creating an oligopoly within a certain industry. But SOE reform in China at the moment has been focused on consolidation. So they've been combining the really big SOEs, and they now, rather than being oligopolies, are just pure monopolies that crowd out the competition. The second issue is that they have been given technical independence from the state and from the government itself through a series of policies. However, they are no longer dependent from the party itself. The Chinese Communist Party has been reasserting itself into many aspects of day-to-day life and of society, but it's focused very intensely on inserting itself into the state-owned enterprises in China. So you end up with a situation where SOEs that are being told that they have to make decisions based on market forces suddenly have actual people on the board who are there to represent the interests of the party, who essentially have, in more and more SOEs, have an actual vote and approval to be able to determine what the decisions of those companies will be. And then the third big problem is that finance is increasingly flowing from the private sector to the state-owned economy. Essentially, this is that banks in China are all state-owned banks, and they essentially take orders from the government, but also the money is flowing to other SOEs because they are de facto guaranteed by the government. So it doesn't matter how wasteful they are, how inefficient they are, and it doesn't matter if they run up massive debts, because the assumption is that they are safe to invest in because the government will bail them out no matter what. And this has become a really big problem in recent years, to the point where the share of bank loans to non-financial corporations that went to private firms fell from 57% in 2013 to only 19% in 2015, while the share that went to SOEs almost doubled over the same period, from 35% to 69%. So this is a major problem for private businesses in China, where normally European companies have found it difficult to access financing from local banks, but they've been able to find ways to access it from Europe. The problem is that many of their local business partners rely on financing from Chinese banks, and these Chinese banks are no longer providing that financing. And so now many suppliers and many customers of European companies here in China are finding that they don't have the financing needed to run their companies. So this is one of the big rising challenges to doing business in China. Okay, and that's it from me here in Beijing from the European Chamber. I hope that was interesting for people to kind of get a nice high-level summary of the opportunities and challenges as seen by European businesses already doing business here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacob. It was indeed very interesting seeing the various challenges and barriers, but also the possibilities and the latest developments regarding innovative talent and innovative firms in China, and all the opportunities that open up. We do have two questions, one for Helen and one for Jacob. We have one question regarding how to receive a guarantee, or one question. Just 1 second to find it. It's very small here. Yes, when doing business abroad, how can I get an insurance or a payment guarantee? Maybe this is a question for Helen.
Yeah, thank you, Elli. Um, I think as I mentioned in the presentation, first, make sure the partner you choose is someone who first really exists, and they have the you do the necessary due diligence on your potential China partner, and of course in many many deals different from say merger and acquisition or IPO transactions. The Chinese partner may not be so cooperative in providing their financial information. In that case, the second issue I would like to recommend is to pay more attention to the provisions in the contract to conclude. I give some brief introduction about this in my presentation. For example, if you buy products from China from some Chinese sellers and do not take the payment term or advance payment, and also if you can choose letter of credit, but still in practice there are such cases that like what I mentioned, the European buyer placed an order for cooking oil. The payment term is letter of credit, but still, because using letter of credit, the seller will, the buyer will review documents, and once the documents provided for payment in the letter of credit are compliant, then the bank will make the payment for the buyer. So when after that the goods may arrive and the buyer may find this is not the goods I ordered, or this is not the quality is not good, then to avoid this, what the buyer can do is to in the contract providing that a specific third-party inspection institution should be decided, and the inspection report issued by this institution should be one of the documents to be delivered by the seller for the payment request. So this way, you will rely on your own, the inspection institution you know and you trust. Yeah.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you very much. There are also two questions for Jacob. So one is, what challenges do I face when exporting wine from Germany to China? This is very specific. I don't know if Jacob is able to answer this so in detail. And also, what about research and development with private companies in China? But we saw in the presentation that is this allowed or possible? Maybe you could just give a few words, Jacob, on these two questions.
Sure. For the challenges for exporting wine from Germany to China, I'm not very sure on that myself. I do know that, for example, things like logistics systems in China and customs procedures have actually been improving quite steadily over recent years. So while there are certainly still challenges, things are actually improving in that regard. And another thing to be positive about is actually that a lot of China's tariffs have actually been going down quite considerably, especially on a lot of sort of middle-class consumer goods. And let me see if I can find the specific number. So we averaged out China's standard tariffs on wines and spirits. And actually, the average rate used to be 28.3%, and it went down to an 8% tariff earlier this year. So, I mean, that's one positive thing where it should be less of a challenge to export now. I can't speak specifically about wine. That's just the average for wine and spirits. But China is quite keen for helping import these middle-class consumer goods because essentially part of its political agreement with the Chinese people is to help develop this middle class and give them access to the things that they demand. So the challenges that do exist at the moment, I would expect them to decrease in the coming years as China tries to improve that. Now moving on to the question about R&D in China with private companies and whether it's allowed. Yes, it's not only allowed, it's encouraged quite heavily by the government. There is a shocking amount of money in grants and subsidies coming out from the government to encourage research and development. It's honestly at the point where it's downright irresponsible how easy it is to get money for R&D. However, what this has led to actually is that of the European companies in China that perform any R&D anywhere in the world, 44% of them have set up an R&D center in China. And a lot of those are in partnerships with local private companies where they're trying to, again, they're combining the top expertise of Europe with top expertise of China to try to see what sort of new things they can come up with. So yes, R&D in China with private companies not only exists, it's being encouraged quite intensely.
Thank you very much, Jacob. As far as I can see here, there are no more questions. Only one, if it is possible to give the contact data of you, Helen and Jacob, to one of the participants. If this is okay, I will do so after the webinar immediately. And yeah, I want to thank the experts today of joining this webinar and giving us so much information and insights on how to do business in China, what challenges and opportunities there are, and also to the participants for being with us and being interested in the China developments. Yeah, contact us and be in contact with us in the next months. Our next webinar will be end of January, and yeah, as I already mentioned, the workshop in Brussels. If you're interested, please contact us or have a look at the web page, and we would be very happy to welcome you in this workshop as well. So thank you very much for participating. Thanks to the experts, and I wish you a good day. Bye bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, Jacob.